Welcome to episode 262 of the Brainy Business, Understanding the Psychology of Why People Buy. Today's episode is all about the network effect. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. Today's episode is all about the network effect. This is something I don't talk about all that often, as it isn't purely behavioral economics related, but I did the episode because a listener requested it, and it was really timely when it came out early on in the pandemic, as this episode originally aired in June of 2020. People were really looking to shift into and embracing a virtual presence, and not surprisingly, there's always a bit of a field of dreams mentality with these things. So I wanted to be sure to share a bit about the nuance of networks and how they create value, with tips for people to keep in mind as they looked for their right partners or whatever else they wanted to put together to increase its chances of success. So you may be wondering, if it doesn't come up often, why the heck are you talking about it again now? Well, I am delighted that on this coming Friday's episode, I had the chance to sit down with Gina Bianchini, founder and CEO of Mighty, which is the creator of the platform Mighty Networks, where the Be Thoughtful revolution has been since May of 2021. She has a new book out called Purpose, which is all about creating communities and their importance for us as humans. It's a really great book, and because of her background in Silicon Valley and history of building great communities, we talk a bit about the network effect in the conversation. So it felt like a great opportunity to refresh this one as you get ready to tune in to that conversation on Friday. As you listen today, I encourage you to think about communities. What have they meant to you personally in the past? Where do you connect with others? What do you love about your real communities? Those in person you've had over your lifetime? Who do you feel closest to? And what is it you bond over? Is any of that present in your business now? What about your social media experiences? Just keep that in mind as you listen to this episode on the network effect today, as it'll put you in a really great place for the conversation with Gina in episode 263 that's coming out in just a couple of days. And if you aren't yet subscribed to the Brainy Business Podcast, take a moment to do that now so you won't miss that episode and any others when they're released. Now, before we jump into the episode, I want to remind you that your free network effect worksheet and links to past episodes and books and articles are all waiting for you in the show notes for this episode, which are found within the app you're listening to and at thebrainybusiness.com/263. And before we jump right into the network effect, a quick shout out to Clayton Key, whom you can all thank for today's episode. Clayton and I connected on LinkedIn, and in our messenger conversation, he recommended the topic of this episode. He is an avid listener of the podcast, and thank you for that, of course, as well, Clayton, and mentioned that he loved the Peloton episode and noted that since 6 of the 10 largest companies of the world are platforms built upon the network effect, said he would love to hear an episode on how behavioral economics could be used to grow a platform-based business or enhance the network effect in either a two-sided or multi-sided platform. And I will be defining a lot of that for you throughout the episode. Don't worry. He had a couple of other questions that I'm going to weave in throughout the episode as well. But again, I want to thank Clayton for his great episode suggestion. And if you ever want to suggest an episode or ask questions, please do connect with me on social media, as I love getting feedback from listeners. You can find me as The Brainy Biz, B-I-Z, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and as The Brainy Business on YouTube and LinkedIn. And of course, you can also connect with me, Melina Palmer, directly on LinkedIn like Clayton did, and we can have a conversation there. I look forward to seeing you all on the socials, which, as you'll find out, are all businesses that are built out and benefiting from the network effect. So, what is the network effect and how does it work? In its simplest form, the network effect is when the value of a business increases as the network grows. Last week, I talked about Henry Ford and the benefits of his mass production. While the first car is the most expensive and the business can benefit as it sells more cars because the cost of production goes down over each vehicle sold, if only one person buys a car, they can get benefits from that car without their friends, neighbors, or family having them. We're going to ignore the gas station problem in this example. A car is a product that is not dependent upon other people having them for me to get value when I buy it as a consumer. Similarly, if I buy plants for my yard or meat from a butcher, it makes no difference to me if the person down the street buys meat. My experience is not altered. For that reason, those businesses are not ones built on the network effect traditionally. Network effect businesses have gotten incredibly common in recent years, but have been around before the digital age. One of the early and commonly cited examples is the telephone. If I was an early adopter and bought the very first telephone and no one else got one, it has absolutely no value. It's a clunky, expensive paperweight. If I was to convince my mom to get one, then it has a little bit of value because I can call her. And then when 10 people have a phone, it's hugely more valuable because each person can call 9 other people. When 1 million people have phones and can call each other, it's incredibly valuable because everyone can call anyone. The network effect makes it so new people joining the network increase the value for everyone. This is built upon Metcalfe's law that the value of a network is equal to the square of the nodes that it has. So if there are 10 people in the network, the value is 100 because 10 times 10 equals 100. And by that law of growth, the value gets substantially bigger with each new person added. Adding a single extra user when you have 10 doesn't just make the value go up to 11 or even 101, but to 121 because everyone can connect with that new user. By the time you hit a mere 1,000 users, the value has hit 1 million. You can easily see why some of the most valuable companies today are built upon the benefits of the network effect. The internet was a network effect explosion that allowed so many other businesses to grow and thrive upon it. eBay, Etsy, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, PayPal, Uber, Lyft, AirBNB, Google, Wikipedia, Pinterest, and Apple's App Store are just a few of the many businesses these days built on the network effect. It's important to note that with any of these businesses, they get better and more valuable as users grow. Yes, that means they can make money and invest back into themselves, but at their cores, they're built on the strength of the network. As more people use Google to search for things, it learns how people ask questions and gets better for everyone else. When people are adding content to YouTube, there's more to watch and enjoy. As there are more listings on AirBNB, it becomes a better experience for those using it. There are a few types of network effects. Some listed as only 2, many others call out 3, and NFX had 13 different types. I'm not going to get into all 13 types and classifications from NFX, as that's for someone, as I said, who's really building this out. And there is a link for you in the show notes if you want to check that out and you are building your own network effect platform-based business and want more details on that. Again, those are at thebrainybusiness.com/106. The 3 most common types, which I'm going to talk about on the show today, are direct, two-sided, and local. A direct network effect, which may also be called same-side effects, is when an increase in usage and users leads to a direct increase in the product or service's value for other users. Our basic telephone example showcases the direct network effect. The more people who have phones, the more people can call each other, making it more valuable for current users, which in turn attracts new users. The flip side, of course, is that as less people use the phone, it's less valuable for everyone. Say there was a new technology that made people stop using phones. If no one else has a phone number to call, why would you want to keep yours? When you get to a platform business, they're a little more complex because there are multiple user groups to consider, which is when you get to a two-sided network effect. And this may also be referred to as an indirect network effect or cross-site effects or multi-sided network effect. With the two-sided network effect, when someone from one user group joins the network, the value increases for one or more of the other user groups. I'm going to use Uber as an example and talk only about two groups for simplicity's sake. We're going to talk about the riders and the drivers. As a rider, if someone else joins as a rider, it doesn't really benefit me as a rider myself. In actuality, it might negatively impact me if there isn't a proportionate increase in drivers because it would impact wait times and can also mean increased prices. This is something that the business needs to carefully monitor to ensure the balance exists for both sides of the equation. So when a rider joins the network, it is unimportant to other riders at best and possibly a negative. But it is a value add for the drivers because there are more people to pick up and pay them. In contrast, when a new driver joins the network, it's a neutral or a negative for other drivers because that driver could take some of their fares. But it's a value add for the riders because there are more cars available, shorter wait times, and lower prices. The key difference from a two-sided network and a direct network effect is that the type of user joining matters. As I said, monitoring to know what type of user you need, how to attract and incentivize them, and possibly deter the other side is important in this model. And I've linked back to the episode on incentives from the series on nudges in the show notes. eBay is another example of a two-sided network. They need both buyers and sellers for it to be valuable. You may want to attract a ton of sellers from all sorts of different types of products, but without people to buy those products, the sellers won't waste their time. Similarly, buyers won't look if there isn't enough good stuff to purchase. Increasing buyers means more people bid on items and the price goes up, which the sellers like, so more people come to the platform to sell more stuff, which drives down the prices and attracts more buyers, and on, hopefully in this virtuous cycle, which is also known as a positive feedback loop, moving up and up and up. Sometimes the network is of value to the sellers, and other times it's more of a value to the buyers. It's kind of like the housing market, where people will say it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, depending on the inventory that's available. The business will ebb and flow, and someone who's running that business needs to be vigilant and playing puppet master, essentially, to ensure everything stays in a reasonable balance so you don't have a mass exodus on one side, which can topple the entire platform incredibly quickly if you aren't careful. In the case of a social network, which is a two-sided network as well, they need to be monitoring their user quality to remain viable and increase value. This gets to one of Clayton's specific questions, which was, what are examples of behavioral economic successes in the growth of one platform versus the potential failure of another? Facebook versus MySpace. In my research, I found some specific examples and descriptions of what happened for Facebook and MySpace. MySpace was first to the market in 2003, and Facebook followed shortly thereafter in 2004. While Facebook started as a platform that was only for students at Harvard, it quickly launched to other universities and then to high school students and then to everyone as it is today. Facebook, in essence, started out as a direct network in that each new user directly benefits the other users because they're additional connections you could be connected to. When they started running ads in 2007, they became a two-sided network. To leverage the full potential of the network, any social platform needs to maintain and monitor the quality of their users to ensure there aren't spam and spam accounts, something they attract more of as they grow. Advertisers don't want to spend money to put ads in front of bots and scammers. They want real people who are primed and ready to buy their products or services. To attract the advertisers and make money, you need good users. And in addition, making sure the accounts are of high quality and not scammers is also good for the users of Facebook. You don't want to be connected to someone you think is your Aunt Sally and find out as a bot or a scammer. That's the type of thing that will make someone leave the platform and tell everyone they know to do the same. In a nutshell, it sounds like Facebook put the focus on maintaining great user quality and growing with good accounts, not just growth for the sake of having numbers, to keep both sides of their network happy. And MySpace didn't. Their system got full of scammy, spammy accounts, and people left. I'm going to put a pin in the Facebook MySpace conundrum and the behavioral economics concepts related to it for now, so I can finish talking about the types of network effects as well as what network effects are not and some of the negatives within the space before coming back around to that. So pin in that for now. And the last type of network effect that I'm going to talk about is the local network effect, which is actually used by Facebook as well, and pretty much every other social network out there. You see, Facebook is not just one user base, but it's actually made up of a plethora of smaller local networks. As each local network grows and increases engagement, the value of the entire network grows along with it. I found a great example about YouTube, which explains this well, and you'll be able to see how this applies to the strength of any other network out there. So YouTube has all sorts of local user types that go to it for content. Knitters, makeup artists, gamers, pet owners, people doing DIY projects on their yard or wanting to learn about behavioral economics concepts. The list goes on and on. Each of those local networks will grow on its own, and it's important for YouTube to make it so each of them can thrive. If they were only reliant on one group and a new network came up and stole all those users, they would be done for. For example, Twitch, which many of the gamers moved over to from YouTube because it was a platform built just for them. YouTube has enough other local user groups, knitters, makeup artists, and DIYers, that it isn't catastrophic for them if one group leaves. It's important to monitor, of course, but making it easy for each group to thrive is also important. Unlike the previous type of network effect, where adding a driver is bad for other drivers and good for the other group of writers, adding a gamer doesn't have any impact at all on the knitters. It does, however, add value to their own group. Similarly, a new knitter is great for those who want to learn to knit, but doesn't impact those looking for gaming videos. People can, of course, be part of many groups, and so attracting diverse users who understand all the content they can get access to on the platform to keep them there and make them want to come to your site first when they need something is key. In the case of network effects, local doesn't have to mean down the street, and global doesn't necessarily mean around the world. Local is like an affinity group, people with similar interests and who are connected to each other for some reason that doesn't have to be geography. Like I said, I might watch a how-to knitting video from someone in London or India or Washington State. They're all part of that local group of knitters from this definition. When you're talking about global effects in a network, it more means that it's impacting everyone across the entire platform. And the platform itself may only be for a smaller group. Like when Facebook first started and it was only for Harvard students. There could have been a global change that impacted every user, including all the local groups of jocks, science, and business students. Now that I've told you about the 3 most common types of network effects, I'm going to tell a little about what this does not include and some of the drawbacks for someone looking to use this type of business model. Another term you may have heard before is network externality, which is similar but different from a network effect. Network externality is an economics term that's showing how demand increases when other people buy a product. To use our behavioral economics terms, this is your herding and social proof in action. When there are a lot of people in the restaurant, you assume it's good. When a business has a lot of 5-star reviews on Yelp, you are more likely to want to buy from it. When a lot of people are watching an item on eBay, you're more likely to want to bid. Also, availability bias can come into play with network externalities. So if you see a lot of people wearing a particular brand, or you see a certain type of car everywhere and assume it's popular and want to get one. While network externalities influence a network effect, and they can work hand in hand and are both important for a business using the network effect, they're not the same thing. And a business that is not built on the network effect still should be considering those network externalities to increase sales. Similarly, a network effect is not the same as going viral. Just like network externalities, they can positively impact each other and often do happen together, but they do not have to go together and are not the same. A business can have network effects, but not be viral. And there are lots of things that go viral without any network effects. A cat video that goes viral on YouTube can increase its network effects, but the person or business who posted the viral video doesn't necessarily have a network effect tied into their business, and likely doesn't. Fax machines had network effects, but never went viral. I've linked to an article in the show notes if you want to learn more about these two concepts and how they differ. So far, we've talked a lot about the upsides of the network effect and why it's a valuable model for a business. But it's very important to consider both sides of this equation. There are some serious negatives, or maybe we should call them hurdles, to keep in mind in this kind of model. When the model is thriving, like Uber, Amazon, Facebook, and YouTube, it's easy to say, I want that, and only look at the benefits that come at the end. But there's a lot of work that has to go into creating one of those models, and they'll often operate at a loss for a long time before hitting critical mass, which is the point where there are enough users so the cost of joining the platform is less than the value of joining. And most of that value comes from the power of the network itself. This is why when you get into a platform early, you get special benefits and incentives. The company needs to motivate you to join to help hit that critical mass point. It costs them much more per user, but it helps to prove the concept and get to a point where the snowball can start rolling down the hill. If you're a business looking to start on a network effect business, you need to understand when you will hit critical mass, what it looks like when you get there, and what you need to do to get there quickly so you can move into that value point. And not every business needs to be setting up a global model like Uber to hit critical mass. As I mentioned, last week's episode was about subscription models and membership groups. When I talked about understanding your break-even point and knowing how many people you need to sign up for the membership group to cover those costs, that can be a way to look at this to find your own value point, which also helps the network have value. So when setting up this model, remember that you need to be able to stick it out for a while up front, while it may be costing you money, knowing it will pay off once you hit critical mass. The interaction within the group is where a lot of the value comes from. Not every group has this. For example, my subscription to a magazine doesn't have the network effect because I don't read that with others, and my enjoyment of the content isn't dependent upon how many people are reading it. Whether I'm the only one there, or there are 10,000 or 1,000,000 readers, my experience is the same. Though for a subscription service like Canva, there is a network effect because people submit and create templates and new images and stickers and things for others to use, and they have other curated content within the system. So as more people use Canva and create templates, there's better content for me to make and get inspired from, which encourages more designers to create templates to sell, and it all works well together. As I've already said, this platform model is looking for quality growth, not just growth. Remember Facebook versus MySpace. And as you grow, there's more work to keep out the spammers and scammers and make sure you're maintaining that high quality user base. This also leads to the next problem, which is that as your platform grows, it can become too big for its britches and be difficult to keep doing the policing you once did. In Facebook's case, what worked when there were a few million users didn't work as well when they crossed the 1 billion threshold. They have over 2 billion users today and have been plagued by spams and scams since crossing that 1 billion mark in a way that they can't squash out in the way that they used to. Some members have left because of it, but a lot are clearly still using Facebook. If they gave up on policing users altogether, though, it could get taken down by spammers a lot quicker than many of us realize. The other related problem is congestion. What can happen if you grow disproportionately? Remember the Uber rider driver problem. Or if you have too many people come on at one time and have a delivery issue, which can create a negative peak end effect. So people are dissatisfied and more likely to leave. Network effects are not quite a house of cards, but being dependent upon users working harmoniously together does make a somewhat precarious beast that needs constant monitoring and attention. I've linked to an article from Wired on how these businesses can fail as they grow larger, with details about 3 specific areas of concern: connection, content, and clout. Essentially, as you have new users join, there may be too many in diverse groups to have the same great connections it once had, making it feel spammy. It can also be difficult to curate content as it grows, making it feel impersonal and spammy. And the clout piece comes from throttling which content gets seen if there's too much going on, so it only promotes certain groups. For example, Twitter used to be a must for businesses. People were on it constantly, and you could quickly gain Twitter clout and have a massive engaged following. I know a lot of businesses today who have completely abandoned Twitter, and I get frustrated with it myself as I'm working to build my own quality following. For one thing, it does have a ton of spammy accounts, and whenever I've done ads, it seems the content gets sucked up by those and they all get mass deleted down the line. So it's a waste of time and money. This isn't the case for everyone doing ads on Twitter, mind you, just my own experience. Similarly, if you don't already have a super engaged audience, when you post on Twitter using a hashtag, they promote the most popular posts from the most popular people, meaning people looking at that specific hashtag only see the popular ones, making them more popular. It doesn't mean they're better than anyone else's tweets. Someone from a small account could be way more interesting or poignant. But if you don't have enough clout already, it can be really difficult to break through and grow in engaged followers. I've also linked to a great article from the Harvard Business Review called "Network Effects Aren't Enough," to give more insight into some of the negative network effects to be aware of if you are considering this type of model. Again, those are all in the show notes for you. Similar to the 3 negative C's from Wired, I've linked to a really great article from Applico on optimizing network effects in platform design, which showcases the 5 C's of network effects: connection, communication, collaboration, curation, and community. For connection, you want it to be easy for people to find the right people to buy from or sell to or share to and collaborate with. If it's too difficult to use and get value out of, you will not hit critical mass and see the value of the network effect. Users need to be able to communicate with each other seamlessly. Again, make it easy to use and reduce friction. I've linked to the episode interviewing Roger Dooley on his book by that same name to help you learn more about how to do that. Step 3 is curating those users and the content to ensure you aren't becoming spammy. Step 4 is to let the users collaborate so they can build their own local networks within the global network. Remember, the knitters versus gamers of YouTube. So it can be strong in varying areas. This builds value for users and helps the business to continue to thrive even if a competitor emerges in one specific area. And the last very related note is about community. Help make it easy for people to feel like they're part of the global community so they can take ownership over their content and being part of quality creation within the platform itself. Those users begin to take ownership over that, and it becomes part of their identity. So loss aversion and regret aversion are triggered if they ever think about leaving. It could also be creating a bit of an IKEA effect, depending on how much they're able to contribute. People like and value things more that they invested in building themselves, like furniture from IKEA. So if your users help build the platform and can provide feedback and see it being implemented, they will overlook small flaws that would otherwise irritate them because they helped to build it. I've also linked to an article from Forbes on how to harness the power of network effects. Here are a few of the key ones that are outside of what I've already talked about specifically in the episode. Number 1, partner with industries that build complementary products and constantly look for ways to add value to your platform that don't necessarily need to cost you money and time. That can allow you to build out additional network effects en masse when you're able to add the benefits of an adjacent network and its aligned benefits. The second tactic is to build an effective business model. In case I haven't spelled it out enough, you really, really need to plan this type of business to make sure you don't flounder and fail. And it's a good idea to start smaller and build critical mass in select spots before growing to the next big space. If Facebook had tried to be for everyone right off the bat, it would never have been successful. Well, never say never, I guess, but it would have been a lot harder. Getting critical mass at Harvard was key to get other universities interested, then high schools, and then to the general public. You need to start with a small enough group to get the value for people early. I've linked to another article in the show notes with 16 different metrics to use to measure the effectiveness of your network. And the third item here is to put effort in to retain the customers you've added. As I've said throughout the episode, when people start to leave, it can be catastrophic if they talk to each other and the mass exodus begins. Focus on operational excellence, great branding, and high value, so most people who join the network stay for the long haul. As we close out the episode, I want to revisit a couple of questions from Clayton to round out what we talked about today. One of his questions was, how does a platform-based company leverage behavioral economics to increase the network effect? I talked about this a bit throughout the episode, but to call it out here, those network externalities of social proof and herding will be very valuable to attract new members to the network. You also want to frame the messaging in a way to showcase the value, which I talked about a lot in last week's episode on subscriptions and memberships. I've also linked to the episode, What is Value, in the show notes to help show how much perceptions can shift based on the way the information is presented. You want to make sure people can clearly see the value to them, even when it's a little bit out of balance. And that's why you want to be including those incentives early on, which are part of nudging, to make sure that people feel that value at any point, and you need to give them an incentive early on to really feel the value that goes away as the value of the network goes up. So understanding when to incorporate incentives and on which side. So you want to make sure you're incenting new drivers to sign up when you need them, but not incenting that when you're needing more riders to come into the equation. So again, knowing where those incentives go and then how to present them to make sure the value is really clear. I haven't mentioned defaults yet in the episode, but you can also have a powerful default option to make it easy for someone to choose to join the network. You want it to be as easy as possible, and again, framed with the value to where people say, why wouldn't I do this? And then setting up so you can become part of their habits. Getting someone to sign up is one thing, but there's a reason platforms and apps need to track daily active users to show engagement. You want a platform people actually use so the network effect can grow and thrive. If they sign up and never come back, you will not get your network effect benefits. The last question he asked was, are there any concepts that aid companies in leveraging their network effect to transition to other vertical or horizontal businesses outside of their initial product offering? Brand extensions are complex, and there's a plethora of research available, so maybe this will have its own episode at some point. Let me know if you would be interested in hearing that. But I have linked to one article called Consumer Evaluations of Brand Extensions in the show notes, which explains what much of the research shows. That the fit between the extension and the original product offering or brand really matters. I've also linked to a fun article of some of the biggest failures in brand extensions, including Colgate's kitchen entrees and Zippo perfume for women. Colgate is a great brand of toothpaste, and while they can probably technically manufacture food, is it something that I really want to eat? It doesn't sound great. Zippo lighters have fluid in them, but does that align with what I personally want to smell like and carry around? Again, no. Having a strong brand and network doesn't mean you can easily extend that into another category and not fail. Similar to some of the advice earlier on in the episode, consider what is complementary and maybe do some observational research to see what people are seeking out in alignment with your offering. If Netflix was to offer a popcorn subscription, we'd all get it and would probably be happy to buy it. And I'm kind of wondering why they haven't done that yet. Or even a subscription that sent your favorite popcorn and candy to your house once a month. That sounds awesome and could just line up with existing manufacturers. I'm going to make some calls about this one. Remember, you heard it here first. Brand extensions are a delicate balance of finding something that's related enough to make some sense for tying it to the original brand, but not so close it feels like it should have just been part of the main offering to begin with. And if you propose the idea and people immediately react with an impulsive disgust reaction, do take that to heart and consider launching a completely new brand instead of having it be an extension. If Clorox bleach wanted to start selling food, we would all be concerned because yuck. But Clorox is owned by Procter & Gamble, which has tons of brands. If they wanted one that made food, no one would really worry about it. But bleach and food don't mix. And while those aren't really brands that are aligned with a network effect, the concept stands and was relevant in sort of proving that point and answering the question for you there, Clayton. And that's it for the network effect. I hope you've all learned a lot about the value of this for business and how you could leverage it within your own business if you plan properly. Again, there are tons and tons of links for you in the show notes, as well as a freebie worksheet with the 3 main types of network effects and other important notes. So what got your brain buzzing as you learned about the network effect today? For me, I love thinking about communities and helping to build engagement in all its forms. It is so important in life and business, and I want every company to be able to think about ways they can be bringing community to their efforts. Look at all the great brands that leverage the network effect. Uber, Lyft, Netflix, Facebook, Instagram, Etsy, eBay, Mighty Networks, LinkedIn, Google, PayPal, Airbnb, YouTube, the App Store, Peloton, so many more. It's amazing how prevalent this is in our lives today, even though we don't really realize it all the time as a consumer. So why don't people think about this more in their companies? Hopefully, this refreshed episode on the network effect today and Friday's upcoming conversation with Gina Bianchini, CEO of Mighty, will help you to bring that human connection via technology into the offering at your business. I asked you at the beginning of the episode to think about your favorite communities that you have been a part of in your life. Will you come share it with me, whatever it is? If you're already in the Be Thoughtful revolution, I would love to hear about it there, so please come join that conversation. You can also find me on social media as The Brainy Biz pretty much everywhere and as Melina Palmer on LinkedIn. I can't wait to hear about your favorite communities wherever you choose to share those with me. And as we close out the show, don't forget that your free network effect worksheet, related past episodes, related books and articles are all waiting for you in the show notes at thebrainybusiness.com/262. And just like that, episode 262 on the network effect is done. Join me Friday for a brand new episode with Gina Bianchini to discuss her book, Purpose, Design a Community and Change Your Life. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Melina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.